The legislative inquiries into flood control corruption have reached the naming stage. Contractors naming congressmen and their bagmen, DPWH engineers naming senators, senators pointing in the general direction of named ex-DPWH secretaries. What happens when the political class investigating the corruption itself harbors the suspects? Or rather, what doesn't happen? The public remains deeply angry. Will the investigations help resolve the issue or merely diffuse it? What is the end game? Hi, I'm John Nery and you are in the public square. The political class, from President Marcos Jr. on down, is implicated in the culture of corruption, of which the flood control mess is only the latest but also the most brazen expression. To help us gain a better perspective grounded in political science, we are joined from Rojas City by Dr. Clement Camposano, Chancellor of the University of the Philippines Visayas, and in the studio in the public square Suki, Cleve Arguelles, President of WR Numero Research. Welcome, Chancey, Clem, and Cleve, and thank you for joining us in the public square.
Thank you for having me, John, and hi, Chancey, Clem.
Yes, thank you, John, and again, hi, Cleve. Nice to see you again.
Let me start by first getting our bearings. No? What do you think is happening right now, Chancellor?
Okay, John. First of all, I don't think that what's happening now is really new. We've seen this all before.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is just a matter of scale, but what's happening is that this is this periodic cycle of people being enraged by corruption that they have always known to be there, except that the scale becomes scandalous. So, but really, if you think long and hard about it, this is something that we've seen before. No? So walang bago. No? There's nothing new about this. And that's really, I think, my concern, because we seem to be going around in circles when it comes to the problem of corruption.
Cleve, nothing new, but maybe except scale. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think the magnitude, the amount of money that we're talking about here, it's billions and billions of pesos. It's unimaginable for an ordinary Filipino. But I also think that what's happening is that yes, it's part of this cycle that we discover corruption issues and kind of like purge the nation from corruption. But I also think that what's really happening is that Marcos Jr., the president, has finally taken control of the national political situation. He's at the center of it. I think what we've realized is that going into the midterms and right after that he has lost significance, control of the national political situation. Now you can't really say that he is a lame duck, that this is a lame duck presidency after the midterms, given that he has a lot of say of how these started. He was able to shape this particular national conversation, right? Away from other things that may not be good for his administration.
So, I mean, I share your points of view. But is it also, I heard also some people saying that we might actually be going through a historical moment. Are we reading too much into this, Chancey, Clem? Or is this, in fact, a possible inflection point?
Well, much of that would depend on how the president actually will manage what's going on. I mean, I agree with Cliff. This is actually a bold political gamble on his part, and any seasoned political observer will know that a big part of this is actually pretty calculated. Simply because people have known that this system has been in place for quite some time, and that I think people in government know how deep the system goes. This system of collusion. Well, perhaps what's different now from previous scandals is the way this is amplified by digital media.
Okay.
And I think that's probably an element that we have yet to fully comprehend in terms of how it amplifies political events and how the trajectory of the event can in fact shift, no? Because of social media. I mean, look at, for example, the velocity with which the Discayas have crash landed or crashed. One moment they were top of the world. They were bragging about their collection of cars, and in a matter of weeks they're parayan. I mean, nobody would want to touch them with a 10-foot pole. I mean, it's that velocity was probably unheard of, which means that this is very challenging. But like in all things challenging, things can go either way. I think so that I would say that this all depends on the next steps that the president will take, because at this point the scandal, of course, has taken a life of its own. It has velocity, it has traction, but much depends still on how the president will what's the president will take in the next few days.
2 points. No? I wanted to separate the which I got from Chancey Clem. One has to do with the ubiquity now of digital media. The last major scandal we had, the Janet Lim Napoles pork barrel scam, that happened in 2013, 2014. Twitter was already around, Facebook was already around, but not to the same extent that we use it, right? So it still largely happened on the front pages of the Inquirer, for instance, and then on TV, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is what he said. No? It really depends on what the president will do. So we've been waiting, and I think in a matter of days, the president will issue the executive order creating the independent commission. Is there a possibility that something different, something historic might actually happen?
I have a response to this. I think that as much as anyone else, I want this to be a historic moment for the country, right? As someone who's also really tired of corruption and plunder. And if you look at the region, for example, Philippines na lang yung kulang to complete the pink revolution. You have Indonesia, Nepal, and Kenya, countries who are in the middle of protest and riot against inequality and corruption. But we haven't really seen that amount of action in the Philippines. So we are being watched by people in the region. But I think that from a pessimistic point of view, to me the problem is the current structure, kind of like from a structural point of view, that I don't know how credibly the president can be a champion of anti-corruption to the point that he will be able to credibly purge the government without really facing also the corruption allegations, not allegations, but the corruption issue of the Marcos family, right? So I think that, yes, I will, of course, I look forward to what the president will be doing, including the independent commission, right? But there's a structural problem there. He will always be a Marcos, and unless that they face the music as well, then it's not going to be as credible. And tied to that story of the structure is that I think the problem is that our current political landscape is that our elites are fragmented. And because of that...
And fighting each other.
And because of that, I think for it to be a historic moment, there must be some kind of wind that will blow into a specific direction. The problem is that there's so many winds, no? At yung my fear is that, like, I'm not sure if I'm correct, but in a weather system, no, they probably just cancel each other out at the end of the day. That's my fear.
Or create a bigger storm.
Could be, right? If it meets in the right opportunity. But my optimistic from an optimistic point of view, this is probably, especially in recent years, a historic opening for the country because I think there is an observation among people like me na maybe corruption is no longer an issue for the Filipino people, given how Marcos won the presidency. Duterte was elected to the vice presidency. We had the Farmally scandal. There were attempts to bring back the attention of the public to these particular issues, but the public did not embrace it, and we had this feeling that it was being rejected or marginalized or sidelined. So that alone, I think, is very important. Could not be, maybe it's not yet a historical moment that has crystallized, but maybe an opening, because if it is back into people's attention and people demand transparency again, anti-corruption, kind of like a ritual of national moral renewal, then that means that their considerations of who to vote for, who to support, what kinds of actions the government will be embraced will also change.
Chancey, do you think this is not a Nixon in China moment for Marcos? No, I mean, like, only Nixon, the arch conservative, could have made this the opening to Mao Zedong's China. We're not saying that only Marcos, who's comes from a corrupt family, can fight corruption. Does the president need to be credible, or does he only need to put political will behind the effort here?
Well, John, I don't really want to second guess the president, and I'm not into speculating about how we think.
Okay.
What I know is that he's still in a position to, in a sense, to create a situation which could in fact create a major political disruption at this point. Like I said, it's a political gamble on his part. Maybe he's assuming that he can still tame this thing. He lets loose political energies and then maybe restore some of that credibility of his. Because after all, he was voted into office, so he still has a political base. So consolidate that base and then maybe use that base to tame the political energies that have been released. Of course, it's really a very interesting question whether you let the genie out and can you force the genie back into the bottle? That's one part of it. The other is, and I'd like to take my bearings from what Cleve said. I actually take a more, for lack of a better term, I think a more laborious view of the process of change. I mean, clearly there are structural factors involved here, but I think that the process of changing our political proclivities will take a long time, and I think it is something that needs to happen if we are going to put an end to many of the dysfunctions that are now afflicting the political system. I mean, for example, very clearly, I mean, everybody is scandalized, everybody is angry, people are crying for blood and so on, but nobody is talking about their own complicity in electing many of these people into Congress. To me, that's the problem, John. I think so much of this political outrage is distracting us from the big picture. The big picture. The big picture is that there is in fact a system of collusion in place that brings together corrupt contractors and their congressional patrons. And of course, this, and there are all these political proclivities on the part of many voters that sustain the system. Okay. To quote a friend of mine from UANP, sabi niya, there is a alipin, alipin mentality. I would really tend to think about these as more as habits, because even the way we make sense of our public life still relies a great deal on the use of familial terms, for example. No? Maybe there's no sense of, or rather, there's a very anemic sense of the public sphere and of the common good. So because of that, I think that we will be saddled with these problems for a while. But that's one big picture. The other big picture, I think that people are losing sight of, and which I intimated about earlier, is really climate change. People are angry because of the floods, but the floods, they brought about the factors really. That's many of these factors are beyond our control. Of course, we control what kind of infrastructures we build. But at this point, I would like to point out that we can only introduce more resilient infrastructure. But to dream of having these floods disappear is I think it's pure fantasy. I mean, we've had these floods forever. For historical reasons, many of our cities are really built on land that's below sea level. Iloilo alone is sitting on an alluvial fan. Everybody knows that. So we all should expect floods to happen. It's really a question of how bad the floods will be, okay? And how quickly we can recover each time we are devastated by floods. So I think that's the big picture that we should not lose sight of. Even as we deal with corruption and we begin the arduous task of dismantling the system of collusion that has been there even before Marcos. But the way showing ngayon yung Quezon na movie, so maybe it's a good place to start, right? The guy who invented the pork barrel system. So, but the thing is, the problem that we're facing is really something that requires a much longer view and a much more sober attitude towards politics. I mean, let's get real. Let us at least know what to expect, no? Because that way, I think we can begin this arduous task of mitigating, these disasters that are really bound to happen. So, I'll take it, John. This is the big picture. I'm afraid people are being distracted with the political drama that's being played out.
Yeah, so this is the longer view. I mean, this is a real issue, right? I mean, we're all feeling the lack of effective flood control systems, for instance, because of the corruption. But we also have to take in the big picture about climate change and also the big picture about our own complicity. I think for many of us, there is a disconnect. No, I mean, our congressman is our congressman, and then there's the whole corrupt system we don't like, right? So there is that disconnect. I want to move away from the long view for a quick minute and focus on one particular event that just happened, and that's the Senate coup. I want to ask you, Cleve, do you think the Senate coup was triggered by the flood control issue? Was this one of the unexpected consequences?
Yeah, I think it was definitely triggered by the flood control issue. The way that because I think that the context also is that the Senate has no longer a monopoly of that attention in terms of how investigations and hearings are done. You see now the House really competing with the quality and the focus of that investigation.
I think for the first time in our history.
Yes. This is probably the first time that I would probably agree with the characterization of people in the House that they call themselves the better House. I'd probably give them that. When it was made clear during one of the hearing, it was particularly Representative Chel Jokno, but also the investigative stories from Rappler journalists that the Senate President is definitely linked to one of the biggest contractors of flood control projects through a donor and also the Senate Majority Leader. I think that it was already clear that they start to become a liability. And add to that the Senate leadership allowed Senator Marcoleta to head the Blue Ribbon Committee and made it into his show, particularly probably also leaning towards a Duterte show, right? I mean, the line of questioning and what is not being allowed. And it didn't, it was easy to replace the Senate leadership because Tito Sotto is a Senate president in waiting. He has the background to be able to galvanize his colleagues. So it was also just, it was, the right opportunity came. And in fact, as you can see, the majority is not really big of that, a majority. So you can't really also say that this is going to be a stable new Senate leadership. So it was just that the right moment that their colleagues in the Senate felt that the Escudero leadership has become a liability, and that they might, they're thinking about their political careers. To be attached to corruption. Of course, for some of them, they came back to the Senate even if they were attached to corruption. But of course, it's a make or break. And then, of course, the credibility of the Senate. So I just thought that it was too much for them, and it was very easy to switch to Tito Sotto. And what was revealed is that the rumors, the observation that what holds the Escudero presidency in power is in fact the Duterte bloc, and that's been revealed now.
That's right. Chancey, you spend a lot of time both in Iloilo, which is where UP Visayas is based, and in the NCR. How does this particular event, this leadership change in the Senate, play in your part of the Visayas? I mean, did people even pay attention to this?
Yes, of course. I mean, that's something that you always have people's attention. You have the new Senate president. But one also has the feeling that life goes on as usual. I mean, we're used to the political noise. No?
Okay.
I mean, we have our own political drama playing out right now.
Yeah, I understand.
And after coming back here, spending 2 decades in Manila, and then staying here, living here, I also noticed that, while you may have that kind of political noise, that the everyday task of governance continues with all its difficulties, with all its dysfunctions. No? But it continues. So I think it takes a certain mindset to see past also the political noise. I mean, perhaps the reason why we have not exploded into that kind of political turmoil that's happening in Indonesia or Nepal, it's because in many of our localities are really more or less stable. There are issues, but somehow these have been managed. So it's really, I think it's really the national political drama that's really that's really very dominant at this point. But John, I'd like to pick up on your discussion about the Senate, no? Because I find it very interesting. I'm not really. I don't know if Cleve, as a political scientist, is an institutionalist. No? I'm not. I'm not 100% institutionalist, mainly because I'm also into anthropology. No? But the thing is, the volatility of the Senate, I think, is a result of the very design of our institutions. No? What am I talking about? Well, 2 elements. Yeah. One, you have a single-term president. Okay. And once you reach the midpoint of single-term presidency, and you don't, and your coalition is really a very tentative one, and that is clearly the case in the Philippines, or all our political coalitions are tentative and completely unstable. So the moment you reach the middle part of the term, the tensions and the maneuverings and the volatility increases. Okay, that's one side. Okay. Kasi wala na second term yan. No? The other is that, when Quezon, balik tayo kay Quezon, when Quezon restored the Senate in I think it was in 1940, if I'm not mistaken, he did not really restore the Senate, but he created a new Senate, which was actually elected at large.
Yes.
Whereas before it was elected regionally, this time it's elected at large. So what you have now is 24 people. I think half of them, or maybe a third of that Senate, are potential presidential candidates. You can imagine, for example, that this creates a Senate that is, I think, by design, would always be at loggerheads with the executive. Alam mo yun, no? Parang frenemy, no? Kaibigan mo, pero at any moment can turn against you, no? If it suits many senators. So ganon, no? The Senate, because it's a nationally elected Senate, means that it's always a staging ground for the presidency. And if you look at the cost of running a campaign right now, national campaign, and we're talking about billions, I think the more political controversy you create, the better, as long as it keeps you in the front pages. Huh? I don't think that this is something that is lost to our senatorial leaders. No? Malinaw yun sa kanila. No? So this political controversy can also really benefit a lot of some people. So yun, sa tingin ko, may I think this is partly by design na may ganito tayong problema. Because if this were a regionally elected Senate, I don't think you would have that same kind of volatility. So there. So medyo may problema sa design. That's why I've always advocated for a regional Senate. And maybe a return to a two-term presidency. Because that affords us some measure of political stability. It's not really because we have so many parties right now. I think the fragmentation of political party system, which is really fragmentation, and you can say this, the fragmentation of the political establishment, it's really because you have a single-term president. I think that's my view of the situation. So it's really scandal. It's controversy prone. And if you're talking about a Senate coup, I mean, a Senate coup is always there. I mean, it's always in the offing. I mean, it's not something that waits for a moment for it to be triggered. But if you only 24 people there, one can easily imagine that a lot of this scheming is really going on backstage, because you only need a small number of votes to actually win this. So and if you have 5 or so people there who are who have political ambitions beyond the Senate, then they would likely become very important players in any scheme. So, ganun lang ang tingin ko. It's inherently unstable, I think.
Yeah, I think, of course, we all understand why we have a single-term presidency. That's a reaction to the very long Marcos rule of the first Marcos, right? But maybe now, I did interview then Senate Minority Leader Tito Soto, and he was open to changing the Constitution. I don't know whether now is in fact the right time. I'm really struck by what you said. 2 weeks ago, I thought that the president and the political class was losing control of what was happening. I mean, I didn't know whether they would, actually resolve this. But now, I'm hearing you, Cleve, and you're saying that David, finally, the president has found a narrative that he can use against the Dutertes, ensure that they do not come back to power and so on. I actually have more questions about the investigations, but I want to go straight to Chancey. Your recommendation, you've called for an independent commission, right? So I'm going to ask you, what did you have in mind? How will it work? And then I will ask Cleve. Cleve, do you think there's public support for this? I don't know if you've actually polled people on should there be an independent commission, or do we trust the Senate, or do we trust the House? But I want to talk about that. Should there be an independent commission investigating the flood control projects? How will it work, Chancellor?
I think what we should have, and I've already said this publicly, is that we need a truth commission.
Okay.
There should be a commission that's independent. I mean, independent even of the president. No? So its existence is legislated. And then this should be open up to a lot of sectors. I mean, I would certainly want some congressmen to be there and maybe some senators, but I think we should bring in a lot of our leaders from other sectors, civil society, maybe academics. What else? Maybe from the religious sector. I mean, as representative as you can make it. I think that would really be decisive. Although I'm not sure if the president is prepared to take that kind of gamble, because if you put that there, if you create that, then there's really no way to guarantee that you can put the genie back in the bottle. So yun ang challenge talaga, no? But I think that's really one way to do this, is to create this truth commission, and at the same time, I think that commission should harness expertise from various institutions. We are not lacking in political and scientific expertise, no? Kasi ang problema ko dito, Dan, also is, alam mo, the phrase flood control has become problematic, so problematic that people might already have a Pavlovian fear of it, no? Pag narinig mo yung flood control, agad negative na, no? But there are in fact areas where you need flood control. So hindi dapat mawala ang flood control itself as a concept, no? And also, of course, what should happen is that aside from infrastructure, we should go towards a more diverse approach to include other possible, like green infrastructure, combination of both.
Yeah.
And of course, eventually, even consider moving many of our communities. But we need to bring in the science. I think bring in the science and throw our whatever political weight, whatever political capital we still have behind the science. Because pag hindi natin ginawa ito, mas malaki ang problema natin.
Yeah, and maybe
That's
also
my take.
and maybe also bring in the art, no, of prosecution. Maybe leave the questioning to practiced lawyers, right? I mean, some people just use it to run. I mean, like in the Senate and in the House, right? Cleve, do you think that there is public support for this kind of approach?
Right. Taking off from what Chancellor Clem said, no, the independent commission, I think the first question is independent of whom, right? Definitely, I think the impression is that it's going to be independent of both houses of Congress because members are implicated. But is it also going to be independent from the president, or is it going to be a presidential commission? So we're not sure, right? Whether there's public support for it. If you look back at the previous polls of public support for the House, the Senate, and the presidency, no, Malacanang, no. If you look at WR Numero, but also in other surveys, the trend that we're seeing is that Malacanang is probably the weakest among the three, especially coming out from the midterms. So the Marcos presidency has lost a lot of support, especially because the 30 supporters has really withdrawn from the administration, and then the House and the Senate are slightly in the same situation. So short of a majority, I think in our last poll, in our August poll, it's like 5% page points short of a majority. So some people are happy, some are not. But what's interesting is that traditionally the Senate should be more popular than the House. But you have the House competing with the Senate's the public support for the Senate. But also interestingly, because we also asked the question if what they think of their local congressman. I think you've mentioned this. Iba yung congressman ko than the House. And if we ask them, what do you think of the performance of your district representative, and they say I'm 80%, 90% happy. So there's a difference in dynamic, no? Maybe if a specific congressman is speaking for his district versus the House speaking versus the Senate and specific senator, it complicates things. But I would assume that by now, because the president has succeeded in shifting our attention on this particular issue and a very important issue, that he might have pick up numbers, and therefore that commission will probably be publicly supported as well.
Will it depend also on the names that the personalities that he will appoint to it?
Definitely. But my my worry now is that I share the concerns of Chancellor Clem that it must be made independent, but it must not be too independent that it's rendered powerless. So it must involve people in power still, because otherwise it might be just a show who will produce a report, right? And then nothing will come out of it.
So maybe the best way is really to legislate it.
Maybe. And I want actually the president to be really associated with it. So that for Marcos, it's also clear for him that whatever this commission will do, it's going to be tied to him, and that he will be accountable. And just very briefly, John, on now that you think that it's surprising that now the reading is that the president has regained control. I think because after the midterms, it's not only the public at large, but also our political elites who were surprised by the results and was trying to understand what's happening actually in the landscape. And I think once it's been made clear to them that it has become fragmented, then they started making a move, and this is the president's move.
Speaking of that, I actually thought that the 15 who make up the new majority in the Senate, more or less, I thought that would be the majority from the start. If the president had not characterized the midterms as a loss, it was a tie. But you go around saying, "Oh, we lost," people would think it's a loss. Right? Anyway, whatever happens, whether it's the Senate investigation or the House investigation or the independent commission of the president or a legislated independent commission, the Discaya couple will figure prominently in it, partly because of their own self-sought prominence, right? They wanted to be famous, and well, they got a different kind of fame. My question is, and I was really intrigued when I read it, how do you read? So the Discayas, a couple of days ago, issued an affidavit, several pages, naming certain people. How do you read their affidavit?
Right. Well, it's a partial affidavit for sure, and that it has something to do with the way that it was presented to the public, and it was through the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, right? And we know, John, that the Senate compared to the House, they have more traditions that are observed, right? One of those traditions is that the chair informs the Senate as a collegial body that there's going to be an affidavit. Some people will be named here, and we can't control what's in there, but there's an advance warning, right? And that's really the practice in the Senate. And from what I've learned is that Senator Marcoleta did not do that. It was an ambush, but given the House questioning yesterday, we were also learning that someone definitely informed the Discayas that there's a possibility to become a state witness, and that there is a particular pathway to become a state witness, and probably these names that they have they selectively made public, these are the names that has been agreed upon as a pathway to that. But they might have misread the situation, because now, if I assume it's the previous Senate leadership, then now that's not the leadership, and they no longer enjoy that kind of influence to be able to give them that pathway. And now in the House, during the hearing, Curly Discaya was saying that was caught requesting for an executive session, or whether the House can just take charge of them for now, right? I can't blame them as well. They have survived, and they have made billions out of people's money because of reading the political landscape.
Yeah, that's right.
But in this case, they read it wrong, and they couldn't control it. And I also think that people have been saying that, oh grabe, nahuli sa the Discayas were caught because they were flexing their luxurious lifestyle and everything, right? But you can't also blame them, because I think for the longest time, or at least the dominant of digital media, and during this time that parang shift in the information ecosystem, it's been made usual. Celebrities, influencers would do this even during the pandemic, right? It's been made usual. So what's very interesting here as a moment is that what shifted public perceptions on what is allowed and not allowed to be seen, right, and to be witnessed.
Yeah, I think that is in fact what happened. That they tried to read the situation and got some of the signs wrong. Chancellor Clem, one of the leading critics of the Discayas affidavit was Mayor Vico Soto, who actually also appeared before the House Infracom hearing. I've heard people say, so for instance, someone like Tony Lavinia say, it's now time for the generation of Vico Soto to lead the way and so on. Chancey, as a university leader, right? You are tasked with helping shape the next generation, right? And I know this smacks of personality orientation, but I can't help but note the outsized role that Vico Soto is playing in this issue. Should we look at him? Should you propose him as a role model for your students?
Thank you for that question, John. Let me quote the late Jesse Robredo. We once went through Naga to do a civic education project with public school teachers. And up until we heard Jesse Robredo speak, we weren't really sure whether we could pull that thing off because sabi namin, this is a locality that's been awarded so many times, nationally, even internationally recognized for good governance. I mean, what are we doing here? Who are we to lecture them on good citizenship? And then Jesse spoke, and he said, what will happen if Naga ends up with leaders with half the talent or maybe half the commitment, leaders who are not as determined to push for reforms. Does that mean that what we have done here will be reversed and so on? So what I'm really saying is this. I mean, definitely we need good governance. Kailangan natin we need this new generation to come in. But John, it's really, I imagine it to be a pair of scissors. Yeah. And we keep asking which blade of the scissor cuts the paper. Is it good governance or good citizenship? I think you need both.
Okay.
You really need both. You need to sustain reforms in both directions. Now, sinabi kanina ni Cleve, I think Cleve mentioned a very interesting matter earlier. He talked about measuring the performance of your district representative. No? Alam mo, interesting yun. Kasi paano mo i-gauge yung performance ng isang congressman? Sa ganda ng batas na pinasan niya o sa dami ng mga basketball court na tinayo niya? Those are two very different things, but I have a sense that, my sense rather, is that yung congressman na walang batas na pinasa pero ang daming pinagbigyan dyan sa distrito niya, yun yung talagang highly rated. No? It's really, as I said, really, let's expose a system of collusion in Congress that brings together corrupt contractors and their congressional patrons, and of course, their protectors in the executive, or their co-conspirators in the executive branch. But let's not forget the sort of political proclivities that actually sustain this system. No? Kasi meron kang congressman, pero actually ang expectation natin naman sa congressman natin, maging dato yan eh. Kaya dato basically goes around, di ba? Dispensing patronage, right? Acting like one. So yun nga, sabi ko, may demokrasya tayo, in-import na natin yung hardware ng presidential system of government. Eh, ang problema yung software natin may kakaiba eh. No? That's why our institutions cannot function the way they were designed to function. because I think that culturally we have all of these problems that have to do with our inability to imagine our place within this larger society of anonymous others. No? Wala tayong sense of the public eh. Tingnan mo to, very, very, ito lang madalas example na ginagamit ko, John. Ano? When I was doing field work in Hong Kong, madalas sinasabi sa akin ng mga OFW kasi favorite pastime namin marites eh, no? Ganun talagang ethnography, marites yun, di ba? So ang madalas sinasabi sa akin ng mga OFW, kinikwento nila yung hygiene ng mga amo nila. No? Sabi nila, itong mga ito, hindi yan araw-araw naliligo, hindi araw-araw nagpapalit ng damit, no? Hindi katulad ng mga Pilipino, araw-araw naliligo, 2 beses. At saka yung sinuot natin ngayon, hindi na natin susuot bukas. No? Sabi ko nga, kung ganun kalinis sa katawan ng mga Pilipino, bakit ang dumi ng Pilipino? Diba? Kung ganun kalinis tayo sa private and intimate spaces, why is the country trashy? So there's that major disconnect. I think that has to do precisely with our inability to locate ourselves within this anonymous society, this larger society. Hindi natin na-imagine yun eh. In fact, that's the reason why any politician needs to craft his strategy or to devise a strategy around, rather by extending simply the ethos of family and ethos of intimacy. Diba? So lahat yan, may mga nickname yan. Lahat yan, nagmo-mobilize ng mga, very emotional na mga cues and so on. Because really, you cannot just appeal to their, to the sense that people will favor you because you have a good program. So to me, it's ultimately, I think, a problem with citizenship. And I think any design or redesign of the institution will falter if we don't do a serious, we don't push long and hard about the need to educate citizens. We're not doing that at the moment. Okay? Yung curriculum natin sa eskwela alam mo grade 3 pa lang may civic ka na no. Pero ano naman klaseng civics ang natutunan ng mga tao doon? So I think we need to do some serious rethinking here.
Well, Chancey, thank you for answering a personality-based question with a structural or systemic answer. One last question for the both of you. First for Chancey, and then we'll have the last word to care of Cleve. Last week, Rappler editor and columnist Herbie Gomez wrote this really insightful and very well-written column where, among other things, he said that the only infrastructure in our country that does not collapse is the wall that protects the powerful. Given that, no, how do you think this particular flood control corruption issue will end? I mean, based on our history, but also maybe with a little dose of optimism, what is the end game, Chancey?
John, ako tingin ko dapat we should look at this controversy in terms of what opportunities there are, no, to effect some measure of change in the system. Let's be opportunistic. No? Let's look at how this controversy can in fact be mobilized to for example, dismantle the system of collusion that bring all these characters together. The other would be maybe time to revisit to reform seriously the budget process. Kasi alam mo, John, if you're going to talk about something very specific, no? Kasi kung constitutional change yan, redesign ng institution, medyo matagal. Pero kung something high impact, tingnan lang natin kung paano ginagawa ang budget. Usually, di ba, pag first reading, then it goes to the committee, right? It gets assigned to the committee. I don't think the budget follows that process. No? At nauuna yata doon sa committee, tapos doon nangyayari. Doon lahat ng insertion na nangyayari. So yung sinasabi natin checks and balances, hindi naman checks and balances na nangyayari dito sa atin. It's really give and take. Di ba? May priority ang palasyo, pakiusap sa mga congressmen and allow them to make their insertion so that everybody is happy. So yung ganung klaseng political compromises, it has become calcified into the system. Baka pwede natin tingnan din, no? Kung paano natin itutuwid yung budget process na yan. Kasi I think that's probably where there are many ways to start this. There are many points of departure, but that should actually be one of those points. Yeah, that's my take. Yeah,
Thank you. Cleve, how will this end?
I think the outcome is uncertain, and that's a good thing.
Okay.
That's a good thing.
Okay.
Because
I will take your word for it.
because if things are we already know the end game that nothing will happen, then that's depressing, right? So I take it positively that the outcome is uncertain. One, on the level of the political elites, it's uncertain which of them will be able to convince the public what way this issue should go, right? Whether it's going to be Malacanang led direction, or it's going to be the Senate or the House, right? The difference is that whoever gets to convince the public consolidates public support on that direction. Therefore, then they have an upper hand on dictating the terms of what will happen next, right? If it's going to be with the Senate, I could imagine a lot of the congressmen will be prosecuted, and then if it's the House, then it's going to be the reverse. The senators will be the focus of the attention. If it's the president who gets to lead, then now he has another way to revive his presidency. But also, second, I think it's also uncertain still how the public will react. My observation is that the public is generally very indignant about what they see. I like the fact that we have a very visual representation of the cash on the table, that obscene amount of cash. We live in a very visual world now, right? So I think that's very important. So I can't wait to see whether that kind of visual evidence will turn this indignant public to take action, right? Because I also think that one of the legacies of the Duterte years is really just a public resigned and demobilized, right? But I can see that it's possible for us to relearn the ways and to relearn the ways and rebuild the civil society. I was a youth and active student leader during the time of the Million People March, and it was an exciting time. I can remember that we went through the different, because I was from UP Manila, we went through the different universities in the university belt that usually wouldn't really participate in a political protest, right? Well, we were able to get the dancing troops, the varsity, everyone to join the Million People March. I think there is an opportunity for that to happen again, and I think that's also if among the different uncertain outcomes, I think that's the outcome that our political elites are most scared of, that the public will rediscover their power and take matters into their own hands.
Some people are thinking that maybe something like what happened in Indonesia, the storming of the house. So they tried to do that with the Discayas house, right? But I think the political elite can rest assured that that happened in Jakarta because they don't have gated subdivisions.
Right.
They don't have gated communities, right? So the big houses are beside. Dito sila, nakatira sila sa form, nakatira sa may mga guards, hindi pwedeng pasukin. But, this has been truly not only informative but educational. UP Visayas Chancellor Clement Camposano and WR Numero Research President Cleve Arguelles, thank you very much.
Maraming salamat, John.
And that's it for us today. The next step for engaged citizens, as always, is to take a more active part in the democratic project, especially in the face of greater political turbulence. Please download the Rappler Communities app and join the chat room of your choice. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Rappler Plus. Thank you. This is John Nery. See you in the public square.